Hey, 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 live from Denver. It's Friday night. There we are. Excellent. As you can see, for our Critical Conversation show this week, I am flying solo. Mel has been feeling a little under the weather this week, and we are going to give her tonight off, as we sometimes do. She's chilling with Benson, actually, right next door, and having a fine time. So she's fine, but she won't be joining us tonight. So I'm sorry to report on that, but glad that I am looking and sounding good. Okay. Well, Cher, welcome to the channel here. Glad that you're here and that you saw me on Sarah's show. I didn't realize Sarah was posting. We just did the interview a couple of days ago, and it was a lot of fun talking with her. And I'm glad you liked what you saw there and came over to check out my channel. I hope you enjoy the show tonight. Wow, 10 a.m. Saturday in Australia. Oh, time differences. I am trying a little different setup. I got a little mic stand instead of having the boom arm thing here. Raised the camera a little bit, trying a couple little tiny things just to see how it goes with the sound and stuff like that. Yeah, Sarah's awesome. Oh, hey, Carrie, welcome to your first live. Excellent. And I see, of course, all the usual suspects in the chat here as well. Thank you, hello critics out there. Very glad that you are on board. I like to refer to my channel denizens as my critics because, of course, and as we're going to cover tonight, you know, we're kind of going back to basics tonight, going back to the beginning on critical thinking. I thought it might be time to do something like that with the show. But before we start, before we get into anything all serious or anything like that, I want to say it's really great to be here, be live with you guys. I really enjoy this format, and I really like the interaction that we have. Looks like a clown nose. Okay. Yes. Excellent. Okay, so first, let's lead off with, since I don't have a quote of the week because Mel's not with us tonight, let's go ahead and jump first into our de-stressing period of the show with our Snuggles Not Struggles cam. And here is our little bundle of furry joy here. This is our Benson cam. This was also just taken within minutes ago. This is up to date. This is what the little guy is looking like right now. He's getting a haircut this next week, by the way. He is really shaggy dog right now. And he's been a real hyper little bunny. He's unfortunately, we have somebody in the house doing a little bit of work, and so Benson's kind of locked up there with Mel chilling over there. You can see he's just Mr. Fluff Attack here with all that hair. And I believe next time you see him next week when we have our Snuggles Not Struggles cam, you will see a very a shorter haired version of him, which will also look like oh no, I did not know about that. Cher, that's very interesting. Okay, well, yeah, so okay, let me turn that Benson cam off there. I got totally distracted by that comment. No, did not realize that, and that's a shame. That is a real shame. Well, that's, you know, you got to understand cults and how they work, and warn people and talk about this stuff openly and blatantly, because yeah, people will go from one cult to another, and they will get into cults. That happens. That's the entire. Oh, well, you know, the entire point of this channel right here is to try to help people to help themselves to not fall into that kind of thing, because it's so easy to do. As for all the reasons we go over here, there are a panoply. Yeah, I feel bad for her too. Because there are a panoply of reasons. I love that word. I hardly ever get to use it. You know, a large number, right, of reasons why people will be tempted into, manipulated into, deceived into, jump with both feet into culty, guru, you know, situations, coercive situations that are not good for them. You know, like not at all. And And I don't know, in the 10, 11 years that I've been doing this now, I don't know a better way to armor or protect people against cultic influence or manipulation or predatory influence and manipulation than to educate them. Warn them, tell them, give them a heads up, but educate them, and then they'll see it for themselves, right? It's that whole, buy a guy a fish thing, right? He'll eat for a night, teach him how to fish, and, he'll never starve. When it comes to manipulation, when it comes to influence and the ways, that means that people use, predators use against us, in a very, very intentional way now. We're talking about a very specific kind of person who's doing very specific kind of things, not just your everyday arguments, disagreements, upsets, or, problems with people that we all have. That's not abuse, right? Abuse is when somebody's intentionally coming after you. Anything from cyber stalking to real world stalking and harassment to physical abuse, financial abuse, sexual abuse. There's a lot of ways to go in on people and to prey on them if we are going to, stick with our predator, labeling here. So that's what we're trying to do here, is figure out how to not fall for that stuff. And I thought, I've cleared out off camera here. After I finished my metering video this last, week or two, I was so happy to go through this office, this studio space here, right, which is my office, is where I work every day. My desk is right over there, is to get all the Scientology stuff out of here. I mean, I still got plenty of Scientology stuff up here, but as far as having the Ron mags and the references and the pictures and the notes and all these papers and all this stuff around here, that was all this Scientology stuff, I got to clear all that stuff out. And in doing so, I found a couple things in my paper piles that reminded me of, I had actually put aside a pile of books and papers. There's some academic papers, there's some other write-ups, and this thing for a stack of content of things I wanted to talk about or do shows about, again, right, or newly, or talk about this stuff. I've got a whole paper over there on transcendental meditation. I've got a whole paper over there on radical honesty. I've talked about that a couple times here, and that's something I'd like to kind of dive into, because it's culty as hell. And I would like to talk about this tonight. This is the subject of the podcast this week. For those of you who don't know, I have a podcast every week. It's called Speaking of Cults, ... and then whatever the subject is that we're going to be talking about that week. I recently did an interview with John Atack about the destructiveness of Scientology. I posted my metering video as an audio podcast also last week on the Speaking of Cults podcast. And this week I did a show on the baloney detection kit, Carl Sagan's writings from a book he wrote called The Demon Haunted World. That was the first book about critical thinking that I read, and it was the first full book, cover to cover, that I read after I got out of Scientology. I dived into some study about psychiatry. I had dived into some study. This is all back in 2013 when I first got out of Scientology. I dived into LGBT issues and reading and writings about that, so I could get my head clear on Hubbard's nonsense in regards to that community and what that was about, and what and how and why People would identify that way. And again, this was back in 2013. It was a big, there was a lot of media back then about it. And I thought this was absolutely something to figure out and sort out, because Scientology was so homophobic and had so much. I had so many beliefs installed from that, and it was awful. And so I wanted to get all that cleared up, and I did. And you saw, from me, very tolerant, very compassionate, very, let's live together, let's get along, let's stop, killing each other over sexual identity and gender identity and stuff. Come on. This is silly, stupid stuff to get, to hate each other over. And that's a position I still hold, ever since. But where I wanted to go tonight is this was when I first hit on critical thinking, and when I first discovered this stuff, which was very new information for me coming out of a cult. I didn't know what critical thinking was. In Scientology, the word critical has it's a loaded word. We talk about loaded language in cults and how they will emphasize or redefine or give, curved or new or different meanings to words or phrases that they will use, what are called thought-stopping cliches, right? These little sayings, these little pithy, wordings or mantras or sayings that cult members have to shut down thinking so they don't have to think. This show tonight, how thinking goes wrong. And this reminds me, I wanted to say, before I get into the meat of this any further, yes, I'll answer your question here in a second, one love. I wanted to say that, I don't approach this. I don't approach this discussions about critical thinking. And I don't ever have meant to approach this as though I'm talking to you from some pedestal from on high when it comes to how to think properly or clearly or something. It's not like I think any differently than any of you do. I don't have the market cornered on logical and rational thinking. I'm just as emotional and just as silly as everybody else. So I'm only sharing knowledge with you guys because I found it to be incredibly helpful to me. And in learning about it, I can instill a little discipline and a little work with myself to try to do better. And that's all I would ask of anybody else. And that's all that this is about in sharing this information. It's not about trying to create a bunch of Mr. Spocks or a bunch of automatons or something. And it's not me trying to pretend that I have, some secret sauce here. I just know that when I first got out of Scientology, One Love asked me here, what did it actually feel like to learn about the real world? Was it scary, right? And hell yes, it was. It was terrifying. I lived in a kind of fear of the outside world as a Scientologist and the Sea Org member. By design, we were indoctrinated to fear the outside world, to have that whole us versus them sort of thinking. This is what cults do. They're very, very strong about this. They really want you inside their group, and they don't want you associating with or hanging around with or being real friends with anybody out in the big wide world, right? The whole point of cults, one of the whole point of cults is that it's like a little cloistered little world. It's a little mini culture, and they want you in it. And they want you in it totally. It's a totalist kind of a system. And Scientology was very much that. So I feared the outside world. I didn't live in terror like, I'd get panic attacks or something. It wasn't that kind of fear. It was a fear of the other. It was an uncertainty. It was a feeling that they were dangerous to me somehow, that the outside world was a world of ignorance and outright stupidity and willful blindness. And this attitude, unfortunately, stuck with me for a real long time after leaving Scientology, as it does with most ex-Scientologists. I don't know any ex-Scientologist who just came out and just had an epiphany and suddenly they were a great person. There's so much instilled in you in Scientology and in the other cults too, that makes that aggrandizes your ego. It makes you feel like you're the king of the world and nobody can touch you, or nobody really knows all the things you know, right? And all that secret knowledge and secret sauce you have, right? For life. You think you got an inside line to Jesus, you know what I mean? You think you got an inside line to Buddha. You think you got, you know, this sacred knowledge that nobody else has, and your truth is better than everybody else's truth, and all this kind of stuff. I very much was in that frame of mind when I left Scientology, and you don't know what you don't know. You don't realize, you know, what an ego trip you're on when you're in a cult. You think, especially because other cult members are you know, you're also the subject within the cult of punishment and abuse and stress, and a lot of nasty stuff can happen to you in these groups. So you don't feel so special in the group, but then when you think about the outside world, you're like, oh yeah, but I might have it bad here. I might even be a martyr here, but these fools out here, right? Bunch of idiots. I'd rather be going through what I'm going through and have the truth on my side than, you know, be living the life of an idiot. And that was very much my frame of mind as a Sea Org member. So when I got out of that, you know, these are hard habits to strip, because they're deep in you. They're not just something you think about every now and again. It's like a layer of your personality or something. So coming back to this is something I actually got in the mail from skeptic.com all those years ago, back in 2013. I was curious. I'd run into, I was Googling a question, and it was a real important question to me at the time. One moment. Oh, Justin Jose here. Justin Josefly asks, so who is the they? Is it LRH? Who and what do you think is the cult? The cult, the whole cult, everybody. It's a social activity. It's a social function. A cult is a society. It's a culture. And everybody's part of it, and everybody's contributing to it. The leader from on high, or the dogma, the centralized dogma of the cult, is what dictates behavior, dictates your rules, tells you how to dress, how to act, how to be. But it's the group that you're in that enforces those rules. And so it's a whole picture. And you're taught very carefully by the other group members how to think and how to act and what's okay and what's not okay. You know, I was thinking it was so funny. There was an ad yesterday. There was a post on Mike Rinder's blog showing an advertisement on social media from a couple Scientologists in Tampa who were selling their Scientology materials. They had they had purchased, boxes and boxes of L. Ron Hubbard lectures, and they hadn't even opened them. And they were literally writing in this post, we have all these lectures. We haven't even opened a bunch of the boxes. They're just not, you know, something we've gotten to yet. And so we're selling them, and we have okay from Bridge Publications to do this, right? We're selling them to you at half cost, which was $6,400, if I remember right. It was like a lot of money for a bunch of unopened boxes of L. Ron Hubbard lectures. And I just thought it was interesting that they were writing in this social media post, selling these materials, we have okay from the church to do this, right? Because that's apparently what you need in order to sell your stuff. I mean, it's your stuff, but this is the kind of thing I'm talking about, where the culture, the social norms of the group become your new reality. And, you know, and so you have to have okay from Bridge Publications to sell your stuff, right? Like it wouldn't even occur to you to go call up Microsoft and ask them if it was okay for you to sell your computer. You know, you wouldn't even think about something like that. But in Scientology, in a cult, you know, you need special okays and permissions for all kinds of weird stuff. So that's the kind of thing I'm referring to here, right? Well, this red pill, this is exactly what I'm talking about right now. He asks here, when did you realize that you needed to change your mindset from the Scientology stuff to a more metered understanding of the world? When I ran into this stuff. Okay, so let's harken back to 2013. I'll try to not get distracted here. And I was Googling the question, how do I not go from one cult to another? Right? I'd never even heard the term cult hopping yet, but I knew that it was a thing. I knew it was something I didn't want to have happen to me. I didn't yet understand anything about how cults operate. I only knew how Scientology operated, and I knew it was bad. And I knew I didn't want to have that happen to me again. I didn't want to fall for bullshit again. Not like what I had been given in Scientology. And remember, this is still fresh within the first year of me being out, where I was still very angry, very upset, and very afraid of what I didn't know. You know, what do I not know? What do I, that's going to get me? It's going to come up and bite me in the butt, right? And in doing that Google search and looking for how do I detect, how do I know when I'm being presented with a bunch of crap? Well, this is what comes up, right? Is skeptic.com. A guy named Michael Shermer runs that operation. More power to him on that. A guy named James Randi, who's this magician who was this like debunking guy. He debunked people, magicians and psychics and stuff for, not magicians, sorry, psychics and, mentalists and these people who claim supernatural powers. He was all about debunking those people, and he was really good at it. Penn and Teller. They had that show, Bullshit. They're a couple of magicians. They're great, but they debunk crap all the time. And, this was the world I was entering into. I'd never heard of any of this stuff when I was in the church. The whole idea of critical thinking in Scientology is that it's bad. You shouldn't be critical. You shouldn't be doing any critical thinking, because critical means criticism, which means you did bad things to cause you to feel like you need to criticize this person or this thing. If you're critical of something, then that means that you have done things, bad things, morally, wrong things, to the target that you are being critical of. So if you're being critical of Scientology, that means you've got overts, as they call it, against Scientology. You've been stealing money, or you've been doing something, you've been lying to people, you've been up to no good, and that's what causes your critical attitude. That's all bullshit. That's not true. There's lots of valid reasons to be critical of things, but not in Scientology. Not unless you're critical of Scientology's enemies. Then it's okay. Nobody's asking you for your overts or your moral transgressions if you're complaining about psychiatry. But if you complain about L. Ron Hubbard, you're going to be up against a wall. And they're going to have you writing down all of your misdeeds, all your moral transgressions. So the whole idea of critical thought, critical thinking, being critical was something, just as a word, I had to kind of get over. But that wasn't too hard. Getting into the material of this, though, was super, super interesting, because suddenly I was learning about a whole different way of going about thinking, a more scientific and rational approach to thinking itself. The mechanics of thinking, not what you're thinking, it's how you're thinking. And how can you do it better? How could you be more precise, more evidence-based, more rational, right? Less emotional, without losing your humanity, without any kind of like, I'm going to become a different version of myself. It's not a new cult identity I was trying to adopt. And critical thinking isn't a cult. It's not any more of a cult than algebra is a cult, or physics is a cult. This is just a set of principles that you can follow that have something to do with our psychology and have something to do with the way we go about thinking, calculating, rationalizing, working things out, problem solving. And it's really amazing stuff. Oh, yeah, I figured out Scientology was a cult when I realized how many lies L. Ron Hubbard was telling, and went down that whole internet rabbit hole of of awful, of learning all the truth about Scientology. That's when it hit home, right? I was like, oh my God, I've been a part of something I didn't know anything about for almost 30 years. How is this even possible, right? How is this even possible? And boy, it was, once your eyes are open, you can't, you can't close them again. You don't want to. I mean, you can close them again. People do. But anyway, yeah, I didn't want to get into any of that. So, okay. Yeah, but that's a pretty blanket statement. So is there a moment you essentially turn over free will is not really how I would describe it. You don't turn over your free will when you join a cult. That's not really what's happening. What you do is you align your will, your intentions and goals and motivations to that of the cult leader and the dogma that you're adopting. You just get on board, and you get on board in a really serious way. But it's still you. You're doing that. It's not somebody else, coming and grabbing your head and it doesn't work like that. You're doing it, but you're doing it based on the fact that you have been told normally in cult recruitment a whole bunch of lies and nonsense, and you believe you're joining a group under one pretense or for one purpose or goal or activity that you think you're going to be doing, when in fact the reality of it is something completely different. And that's why it's not okay. That's why it's coercive, because they're coercing you. They're unduly influencing you by lying and deceiving you. Every single cult, every time, whether it's a multi-level marketing scheme, whether it's NXIVM, Scientology, any of them, that's what they're doing. Because if they told you everything up front, you wouldn't join. If they told you how much money it was going to cost, if they told you what they were planning on doing to you, if they told you what they were going to do to your bank accounts, to your social relationships, if they told you that, they wanted total control of every aspect of your life and they wanted you on board as a willing participant in that, you'd be like, get the hell out of here, right? So they don't tell you any of that. They sell you on this whole other thing. And you don't turn over your free will. You align your will to this new model, this new situation. So that's more how it works. Okay, so yeah, comes from lies. Yeah, 100% of the time. Cults are lying to people. This stuff is really, really useful because it's the best lie detector you're going to find. You can't always tell by looking at somebody when they're lying to you. You can't always tell just by listening to someone that they're lying to you, but you can think about what they tell you. You can navigate what they tell you. You can be skeptical about what people tell you. You can go, okay, I get that you told me that. Apples are blue. Okay, apples are blue. Good. You're telling me that that's a fact. Okay, have I ever seen a blue apple? No, I haven't. All right. Have I ever seen a picture of a blue apple? Nope, haven't. Okay, well, I don't know if you're lying to me yet, but you are telling me something that I've never seen or experienced. So what do I do about that? Well, what do you do about that? Well, if you're going to critically think about it, then there are very specific things you're going to do about it. And if you're looking for how to detect, bullshit, nonsense, baloney, right? Carl Sagan's got your back, right? He gave 10 tools for this. And this is, again, what the podcast is all about tomorrow. So I'm not going to repeat all that here. Instead, tonight, I thought I'd go over some other things beyond the 10 points of the baloney detection kit from Sagan, rather. There are some other questions, some other things you can throw out there that can help you to figure out if apples are blue. How reliable is the source of the claim? Right? Who is this guy who's telling you apples are blue? Not because you attack the arguer, not the argument, but there's a matter of reliability. There's a matter of what's the source of this information. There are people and there are sources who are wrong often enough that eventually you just write them off, right? This is the entire moral, I guess you could say, of The Boy Who Cried Wolf, right? Is After a while, nobody listens to the kid anymore, right? He's out there yelling wolf. He's out there yelling wolf. He's out there yelling wolf. He's having a grand old time yelling wolf, 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 and there's no wolves anywhere around. And after about 4 times of that, ain't nobody interested in what this kid has to say about wolves anymore, even when they're really attacking him. So this is what we mean by considering the source. Is this a reliable, truthful, honest, good actor? Is this somebody who has a history of maybe altering, twisting, confusing the truth for their own reasons? And after enough instances of that, how many times does it take? Well, we've got a bunch of sayings from history, from different cultures, advising how many times somebody should be believed, right? Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. These kinds of sayings, right? I mean, some people only give you one chance. Don't screw it up. So how reliable is the source of the claim? This could be a very important question, and one that people often don't ask because they are so inflamed or blown up by or titillated by the claim itself. Apples are blue? What? That's wow. I had no idea. Where are they? I got to see these things. I'm going to make a fortune on blue apples, right? And it's like, no, there's no such thing. Who's the dude telling you this, right? How reliable are they? Does the source often make similar claims? Might be another question you could ask. These points, by the way, these 10 questions come out of Michael Shermer directly. He put a 13-hour television series together years and years ago called Exploring the Unknown back in 2000. And things are not always what they seem when you are exploring the unknown. That is true. So where do we draw the line between orthodox science and heretical science, or between science and pseudoscience or non-science? Well, we have to ask these kinds of questions to determine not just the veracity of a piece of information, but also where it comes from and how it is arriving to us. These can be important points. I, for example, will never believe anything Alex Jones ever says for the rest of his life. I used to believe Alex Jones. I was a full-blown Alex Jones conspiracy theorist when I was in Scientology. I've done whole videos about it on my channel, by the way. Years ago, I described it and broke it all down. We used to use Alex Jones to recruit people into Scientology, which should tell you a lot about the mindset of Scientologists. Because Alex Jones is nuts, right? That guy can't be relied upon to tell you the right time. And these are the kind of questions that have led me to that conclusion. Broken clock, right? Maybe he's right here, maybe he's right there. But the dude is so wrong so often about so many important things that he has claimed that I can't be bothered to invest any more time or effort in trying to pay attention to what that guy says. The whole Sandy Hook debacle was just the latest of years and years of total nonsense from that guy. So he would be an example of somebody that I would write off completely at this point. I've debunked that guy, more times than I can count. And after a while, you just get fed up with it, right? It's a boy who cries wolf phenomenon. And he's easy to kind of show as an example of this because he's so blatantly wrong about so many things that he absolutely will swear on a stack of Bibles is absolutely true, right? The guy's just a total nutter. Now, I don't know if he's really mentally unhinged or not as far as clinical diagnosis. I have no idea. I'm not the guy who's going to say that, but I'll use the word nutter in a in a more slangy way. But he's just not. He's not a reliable source of information. That is absolutely a thing we can say for sure about him. So how do we determine something like that? Well, here's another question you can ask. Have the claims been verified by another source? Don't take your data from just one person, not even me, right? All of this stuff applies to me too. I have certain expertise and I have certain things that I'm really good at and I know a lot about. But that doesn't mean I know everything about everything or even everything about cults or about coercive control. There's tons of things I still could know and learn about this field that I'm very, very eager to. real experts and real authorities will tell you that, right? Because there is no one human being that corners the market on anything. The world is far too complicated, and there's too much to know about too many things for any of us to have mastered any of it. But we can get to a certain level, and we can know we're at that level and not feel like an imposter at that level. I know what I know, but I know there's all this other stuff that I don't have a clue about, and I'm like I said, I'm eager to learn. So have the claims been verified by another source? Always go check somebody else. What are other people saying about this? Anybody else claiming blue apples? Google blue apples, right? I mean, this is what Googling stuff is all about, is looking for other sources. And you got to be careful when you're doing that. There's a certain degree of media literacy and Google foo, kind of that you have to have in order to understand how to do that. Because, for example, the news media has has a source for a story like the Associated Press, and then it's just repeated 20 times, 30 times over. So you can find 30 different sources, but actually they're just all repeating the same source. So you got to pay attention to the details sometimes. It demands, unfortunately, the biggest barrier or problem with critical thinking or doing it is that it demands your attention and time. It's not a passive activity. It's only your life. I really, really wish that I had known about this stuff and learned about it and used it way earlier in my life. I would have saved myself decades of grief. Literally decades. So I see this stuff as really important. Here's another question you can ask yourself. How does this fit with what we know about the world and how it works? An extraordinary claim must be placed into a larger context to see how and where it fits. And they give an example here, which I'm going to read to you guys, because I think it's kind of a cool one. When pseudo-archaeologists, hello, History Channel, ancient aliens. When pseudo-archaeologists claim that the Sphinx was built over 10,000 years ago by an advanced race of humans because the Sphinx shows signs of water weathering that could not have happened at the end of the last ice age, they are not presenting any context for that earlier civilization. Where are the rest of the artifacts of those people? Where are their works of art, their weapons, their clothing, their tools, their trash, their dead bodies? This is simply not how history or archaeology works. And you try to point this out to people who are committed to these beliefs, as somebody mentioned earlier, right? Challenging someone's strongly held convictions isn't so easy. Generally, it's met with resistance. That's absolutely right. It's called an emotional investment. And when people are making emotional investments in their beliefs or ideas, it can be really hard to crowbar them out. Facts, reason, evidence often fall on deaf ears. This is why we have, methods like street epistemology and the Socratic method, and let's ask questions instead of making statements, and let's consult the person's understanding, and let's get them to invite you into that thought fortress. Remember that old thing I talk about, right? Where, people have their beliefs inside a fortress inside their head, and they lock those doors, and you ain't getting in. You can argue and batter and ram and yell and scream all you want, and you're not getting in. There are no barriers. There are no walls that are stronger than the ones in our mind. So you got to get them to open that door and invite you in. That's a strategy. There's a way of going about doing that, and yelling and screaming at them isn't going to do it. So there are other things involved in this than just asking questions. You got to engage with people. You have to have them not being defensive with you, not being all riled up and angry with you. You're not going to get so far in those kind of circumstances. Sometimes you can. Sometimes a fact will get through the anger, will get through the nonsense, but more often than not, you want to bring the level down and dial it down a little bit, and then have a more rational conversation with people. Oh God, AI would be the last. I'm sorry, Xenu, but AI would be the last thing I would use for critical thinking. It's a human activity that requires human work. At least right now it does. I would never trust an AI to teach somebody how to do this stuff. But I'm kind of biased against AI. I will admit that. I have concerns. I have many concerns. But that's not the subject of today's show, so we won't get into that any more than that. Just commenting on that. Okay, so how does this fit in with what we know about the world and how it works, right? In other words, there's context, and bringing the whole picture in can sometimes be really clarifying, like in this situation with the Sphinx, right? Like, okay, all right, so there's water damage and we can't explain it. Well, how did it happen? I don't know. But I'll tell you what I do know is I'm not going to invent a whole species of people who existed out of nowhere with no context of any kind just because I think it's a cute idea and I think it's probably how the Sphinx, exists, right? That's where you're really going off the deep end with ideas or beliefs, right? Another question you can ask: has anyone gone out of their way to disprove the claim, or has only confirmatory evidence been sought? Here we are back to confirmation bias, right? Have you even tried to be skeptical about this? Have you even thought critically about it even once? Did you ever ask or challenge yourself on this? Blue apples, all right, but are there really blue apples? Like, is that even possible? Because let's look at how apples grow. Why are they red in the first place? Or green or yellow? What's up with that? Why are they those colors? Well, let's find out. Maybe in so doing, we'll figure out how there could or how it would be impossible for there to be blue apples. All right, find out more, challenge it, instead of only looking for the information that confirms it, because you can rationalize your way to any result you want. People have been doing it for 300,000 years of our existence here. It's just what we do. It's how life survives, as it justifies its existence. It has to keep going, right? And it has to attack other things, and it has to do this, and it has to do that, all in service of continuing its existence. And that doesn't necessarily rely on objective truth to do it. So this is the whole basis of how we get into this mess in the first place, right? Yeah, there are people repeating it, etc. That's right. Okay, so always challenging yourself, always asking yourself the other questions. And by the way, this also goes and extends out even to free speech issues. When you look at what does a society require in order for people to really exercise their free speech intelligently, it would be knowing the other, if you're going to get into a debate or an argument or get into it with somebody, the best possible position to be in would be one where you could explain the other person's argument to them. This is John Stuart Mill, right, on liberty. If you could explain their argument to them as well as or better than they can themselves, if you can arrive to that place in a debate or a discussion with someone else, and not straw mans and not fake, really, you can really get where they're coming from and not necessarily agree with where they're coming from. I'm saying you can understand and state their argument in your own words with your own understanding as well as they can. Then you're in a position to really have some back and forth and really engage with those ideas. And not just coming at it from your point of view, your point of view, your point of view. This is the way it is, and this is all I'm going to look at. That's kind of what cult members do, right? That's what we do when we get obsessively invested in ideas or beliefs. Number 6 question we can ask. This is kind of fun. I hope you guys are enjoying this. Does the preponderance of evidence converge to the claimant's conclusion or a different one? Okay. And here it makes the point, right? What does all the evidence show, or the majority of the evidence show? Not just one piece of it, but all of it. And this is kind of like looking at the bigger picture context of it, but it's a little bit more precise. It's like, okay, all of the evolution, all of the theory of evolution, all the ideas around how evolution works, why it works, what it is about, none of it relies on just one fossil or just one piece of evidence. There are thousands and thousands of pieces of evidence that support evolution as a concept. And as every new piece of evidence is entered into the pool, our understanding of this concept of evolution has changed and grown. It's not just Darwinian anymore. There's a lot more to the concepts and theories and ideas of evolution, biological evolution, than just what Darwin had to say. I mean, and there better be. It's been 100 years, right? It's been a long time. There better be more discoveries on the line of this, and there have been lots and lots of them. And every new piece of the puzzle adds to that picture and makes it grow and become a bigger and bigger picture. So when people talk about, well, you think monkeys turn into humans or fish, turn into dinosaurs or something, you're listening to somebody who has no idea what they're talking about, trying to refute or argue against evolution, for example. And you just know right off, this is somebody who really doesn't have any idea what they're talking about. And that's a real shame because if you engage critically with the information, there are lots of questions that are not answered yet and lots of very interesting pathways that are waiting to be discovered that we could talk about and spend a lot of time looking at, right? But people who have, very rock solid black and white, this is how the world is kind of beliefs, they don't want to engage like that. And they really deny themselves an awful lot of very interesting life and experience and knowledge because of that. Okay, number 7, we got a couple more to go through here, and I think we're going to have time for this. So this is kind of, it's going good so far. Number 7, is the claimant employing the accepted rules of reason and tools of research, or have these been abandoned in favor of others that lead to the desired conclusion? Okay, here we go with UFOologists. Suffer this fallacy in their continued focus on a handful of unexplained atmospheric anomalies and visual misperceptions by uninformed eyewitnesses, while conveniently ignoring the fact that the vast majority of UFO sightings are fully explainable with very interesting and very factual information. So if you hyper focus on only the part you want to see and ignore the rest, you're not really giving yourself the full picture, and you're arguing from a position of confirmation bias, willful ignorance. These can present problems to you because you'll end up saying things that are just embarrassing because there's all this information and you're only looking at a little tiny slice of it because that's the only part that you want to see, or that you want to pay attention to. And I sure as hell did so much of that as a Scientologist. I did so much of that as a conspiracy theorist. In fact, this was actually one of the ways that I ended up debunking myself on the 9/11 truther crap. If you ever heard about 9/11 truthers, there's this whole thing about how it was how 9/11, the disaster of the Twin Towers falling, was a government operation run by the United States military and blah, 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 and blee, blee, blee. And this is all under this banner of 9/11 truthers. We're going to get the truth about 9/11. And it was an inside job, see? And it was this and it was that. And they will hyper focus on very specific pieces of information or very specific pictures, and they won't look at the rest of it. And the second that this all started to fall apart for me personally was when I allowed myself to finally look at some of the other evidence, some of the other stuff that was not in the echo chambers of the 9/11 truthers. And once I started seeing those new pieces of information that weren't allowed in the echo chambers, the bigger picture started presenting itself. And suddenly I realized I was laser focused on a couple small things that weren't really true. They were just being presented this way to make it look like something was true that could not be true, because once you see these other pieces of evidence, you realize that's not true at all. That's not what was meant. That's not what was said. That's not what was done. you expand your points of view out from that. And for me, it all started with, I think it was building 11 or 9 or something. It was one of those buildings that looked like, from one angle, it looked like, it was this controlled demolition and the fire department was involved and blah, blah, blah. And you look at it from the other side of the building and you get a completely different picture. And none of the 9/11 truthers would look at that. So this is why that was the case, Okay. Number 8. Has the claimant provided a different explanation for the observed phenomena, or is it strictly a process of denying the existing explanation? This is a classic debate strategy. Criticize your opponent and never affirm what you yourself believe. Only go at the other side. And this, I've been seeing a lot of this lately, actually. Do they have, if you're going to observe this phenomena, if you're going to say, okay, well, here's, if this isn't it, well, what could it be? What's your ideas or alternative explanations for this? And you don't necessarily have to have one. It's not always true that you have to have the right answer in order to debunk a wrong answer. That is absolutely true. You don't have to have that. But, it's in science, at least, right? It says here, proponents of the pyramid as being built by pre-Egyptians offer no evidence of just who these people are, and instead just pick at anomalies in the work of Egyptian archaeologists. Critics of the Big Bang ignore the convergence of evidence of this cosmological model and focus on the few flaws in the accepted model and have yet to offer a viable cosmological alternative. So, you can carp and criticize at existing models or existing theories, but if you don't have an alternative explanation that includes all the evidence, then you're not really doing science. You're just kind of carping and criticizing, right? Oh, yeah, no. See, this is what I'm talking about. As far as the scientific method goes, who is this? Parasocial audience. The scientific method can only be applied and tested in repeatable, controllable circumstances. 99.99% of life is neither. No, what I'm trying to get across here today is that there's a way of thinking scientifically where you approach problems and issues in a scientific manner where it is applicable and you can use it, and it's not, you don't have to run your life like a science experiment in order to be a critical thinker or think scientifically or think more evidence-based or more rationally than someone who's going through life thinking that, crystal energies and chakras are how they are motivated in going through life. That ain't how you're motivated in going through life, and we can, kind of disprove those things. So that's kind of where I'm coming from on this, is I don't think the scientific method is limited to only a laboratory. It wasn't developed that way, and I don't think that that's how we should think about it. I would disagree with that approach. Oh, okay, yeah, I'll answer that question in a minute. First, I'm going to finish my talk here. So, if the claimant has proffered a new explanation, does it account for as many phenomena as the old explanation? Yeah, that's what I was just going over, as far as you have to include all the data, right? Otherwise, it doesn't really work out so well. And finally, number 10 of what I wanted to go over today. Do the claimant's personal beliefs and biases drive the conclusions, or vice versa? Right. So are we doing this because we are personally biased in this direction, right? If I were to do a study of AI, a legit question might be, hey, are you really down with AI? Are you trying to prove that, maybe it's not so great? Well, I might have that point of view, right? And that would be bias. And bias, of course, is something we all have and have to deal with and have to account for, if we're being honest. And so that's part of the picture here as far as critical thinking goes. Okay. Good. So those are the things I wanted to kind of talk about here. Now, since we have a few minutes left in the show, and somebody's asked me a question that I'm going to go ahead and answer. Phil Rogers says, Chris, Alexander Barnes Ross said you disconnected from him this week because he was trying to make peace with the SPTV folks. Did you really disconnect from Alex? And if so, what is your end goal? My end goal is to have boundaries in my life. And when people attack me publicly on air, which is what people in SPTV have done, ruthlessly and repeatedly, they have attacked my credentials, my credibility, and my character. When people do that repeatedly, then I take offense. I know I'm kind of weird that way, but I don't like people who do that. I don't do that to other people on this channel. And I didn't originate any of that. I didn't start any of that. This channel for many, many years now has been a drama-free zone where I don't get into that stuff. And I don't attack other channel creators, and I don't talk about them except when I'm directly asked what's going on, right? So, okay, I'll tell you. That's my personal view of people who attack me, is I'm not okay with that. I'm not friends with them. I don't continue to associate with them. I'm not somebody who's going to be friendly with somebody who's going to publicly attack and vilify me. I don't think that's a weird thing to say. I don't think there's anything wrong with me drawing boundaries in my life as to who my friends are versus people who are not my friends. And people who attack me are very, very, very clearly not my friends. This isn't constructive criticism. This has been an open and blatant attack for months in an obscene way. I've been called names and various other things. And it's fine. You know, it's like, okay, I'm a public figure. I'm going to be criticized. Got it, right? Alex and I are somebody who had been working together for months on YouTube, off YouTube, and getting along great. Everything was fine. And I didn't have a problem with it. And I didn't have a problem with him. And in fact, I supported him, talked openly, and endorsed his channel and his work. And to the degree that he does effective Scientology work and activism, I'm going to support that. I support him in that work. That's never changed. But if you're going to be my friend, and then you're going to go sit down with my enemies, with people who have publicly and viciously attacked me, and tweet out that that's your chosen family, you're somebody I can't deal with anymore because you're just not. That's my choice. I get to make choices like that in my life as to who I'm going to call friend and who I'm going to associate with. You can have whatever opinion about me or my choices that you want. I don't care. It's not on you to judge my life and my choices. But since that's out there, and Alex put that out there because I wasn't going to, there it is. So you asked a question, that's the answer. And that's why Alex and I will not be doing any further work together, right? Because I can't do that. And I don't think I'm in a wrong position for feeling that way or doing that. So that's how I have done that. Okay? Oh, I see. So it seems like you have decided an entire group of ex-Scientologists are your enemies, and you making sure it will stay that way by treating them like true enemies and drawing lines in the sand. You know, you would never say that about Scientology coming after me, right? I'm the one continuing the problem with the Church of Scientology. Is that your position? That somebody who's being publicly attacked and ridiculed and fair-gamed is the one who's continuing the problem? Is that really how you're coming at me? Okay. If that's what y'all want to think, you can think whatever you want, but it's not reality. I didn't start any of this, and I'm not going to be part of it. And if that's me continuing the problem in your eyes, you got a pretty distorted view of reality, because I just explained myself. And that's all I'm going to say about that. So I thought I would address it since I knew eventually it was probably going to come up. I wasn't, like I said, I wasn't planning on bringing any of this stuff up, but since it's out there, I might as well say what happened and say why I did what I did. You can agree with me or not. I don't really care. It's my life. So that's kind of how I'm approaching that. Okay. So yeah, he's stirring the pot. This is just somebody coming along and stirring the pot. And I decided to go along with it for a minute because if somebody's going to put that stuff out there, I don't want to, leave a mystery as to my actions or my intentions or what I'm about, right? I'm about trying to move the ball down the road in fighting Scientology. And people can work with me on that goal, and I'm okay with that. People don't have to work with me on that goal, and I'm okay with that too. Right? We're never all going to be on the same page on stuff. And a harsh reality of life and the world outside of the cult is that you're going to disagree with people. And sometimes you're going to disagree so hard that you just can't really be on the same page, even though you're kind of doing the same things. That's okay. It's not like, some tragic event or something. It just is what it is. But what some people are doing is not what I'm about. And like I said, if they're going to go publicly make some big thing about me and what I am about, I'm about this work. I'm about doing this work and helping people. I know I help people and I know I do good work. And so that's all I want to do is that part of it. I don't want to get into the rest of the crap, So that's where I'm at. Thank you for asking and presenting that point of view. I hope that you will at least consider my point of view in this. You don't have to, right? I'm just some guy. Yeah. But I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing regardless of what you think. How about that? Okay, guys. So, moving right along, I am going to say that the podcast tomorrow is about the Carl Sagan stuff, like I went over, and we will have a live Q&A on Sunday as usual, 1 o'clock right here. I probably am not ever going to take up any more of these drama questions, okay? This isn't what I want to get into. I got a lot of other stuff I'd rather talk about or get into that I think is a lot more constructive and a lot more purposeful to the mission of what we're supposedly all trying to do here. So I think focusing on that and accentuating the positive is a better move on my channel here. And that's what I'm going to keep doing. All right. So on that, okay. Yeah, great. Everybody's doing wonderful work. Cool. Oh, yes, this document here, right before I go, make sure we get that on screen. This is years ago. I don't know if they're still producing this, but this came from skeptic.com. Skeptic Society webpage, skeptic.com. And I ordered this and a couple other things years ago. It came for free. And it's just packed with a bunch of good data on critical thinking. And like I said, I put it in my pile because I thought, here's something I want to talk about more, right? So there we go. Podcast, etc. Yes. Okay. Phil, we're done. I'm not answering any more of your questions on this topic. I've said what I have to say, and that's all I have to say. And on that, let's wrap up. Okay. Bye, guys.